The jungle was restless that night, heavy with the scent of rain and damp foliage. It hummed with the sounds of unseen creatures moving through the undergrowth. But despite the dense green world teeming with life, an unnatural silence stretched between the trees. Something wasn't right. Dr. Ava Carter tightened her grip on the satellite phone, listening as the worried voice of a local villager crackled through the line. "It is the white elephant," the man whispered in heavily accented English, fear laced in his voice. "It wanders near the river. It is cursed." Ava, an experienced wildlife veterinarian, had spent years working with endangered animals across Asia, but she had never heard a villager sound so unnerved before. The white elephant, a rare and sacred being in local culture, was more than just an animal here. It was an omen, a spirit, a sign of something greater. "It is covered in growths," the villager continued. "The parasites eat its flesh. It does not run, it does not eat. It is dying, doctor." Something heavy settled in Ava's chest. A dying white elephant. She had seen firsthand how human greed had nearly wiped them from existence, hunted not for their ivory, but for their rare and ghostly white skin, seen as a symbol of power and divinity. If this one was sick, they had to act fast. Beside her, Ravi, a seasoned local tracker, had been listening to the call. He let out a slow breath, his expression unreadable. "Do you believe in curses, Dr. Carter?" he asked, his voice low. Ava shot him a glance, already gathering supplies. "I believe in science, Ravi." "Then science better move fast." Their team set out before dawn, moving swiftly but cautiously through the jungle. The villagers had refused to guide them, fearing what seeing the elephant up close would bring upon them. "White elephants do not suffer," an elder had warned. "If it is sick, it is a warning." The words clung to Ava like damp air, but she pushed forward, focusing on the mission. For hours they followed the elephant's trail, deep, dragging footprints, broken branches, and large swaths of flattened grass. But something felt off. There were no fresh dung piles, no sign of foraging. A full-grown elephant should have been stripping the jungle of leaves and fruit, but this one was leaving nothing behind, only a slow, painful path toward the river. And then the smell hit them. It was thick, cloying, the stench of rotting flesh. Ravi was the first to see it. He stopped abruptly, his breath catching in his throat. "Oh no." Ava followed his gaze and felt her stomach drop. There, just beyond the trees, stood the white elephant. The creature was enormous, even in its weakened state. Its once majestic ivory-colored skin, now mottled with oozing wounds and blackened, crusted sores. From its spine down to its legs, thick, barnacle-like growths clung to its flesh, some so deep that parts of its body looked hollowed out, as if eaten away by disease. Flies swarmed its body, the air vibrating with the relentless buzzing of insects, feeding on its misery. But the most haunting part? It did not run. It did not even acknowledge them. The elephant stood in the shallow river, its massive head drooping toward the water, its breathing labored, shallow. Every exhale was like a wheeze, its lungs rattling under the weight of whatever was killing it. Ava swallowed hard. She had never seen anything like this. "It's barely alive," Ravi muttered. "If it collapses, we'll never get it up again." Ava knew he was right. They had to act now. Stepping forward, she raised a calm, steady voice. "Easy, big guy." But the moment she moved closer, the elephant's eyes snapped open, and Ava froze. There was something in its gaze. Not just pain, not just exhaustion, something ancient, something resigned. Ava had worked with elephants for years. She had seen them mourn their dead, protect their young, even weep. But she had never seen one look like it had already accepted its fate. It didn't trust them. It didn't want their help. A chill ran down her spine. "We're running out of time," Ravi said urgently. Ava snapped back to the moment. They had two options: back off and leave it to die, or fight to save it before it was too late. And Ava Carter had never been one to walk away. She turned to her team. "Get the medical gear. We're saving this elephant." The battle for the white giant's life had begun. The jungle air hung thick with the scent of mud, blood, and decay as the rescue team sprang into action. There was no time to hesitate. If they didn't treat the elephant now, it wouldn't live to see another dawn. Ava moved quickly, barking orders as her team unloaded the emergency medical supplies. A tranquilizer dart was out of the question. The elephant was already too weak. If they dosed it incorrectly, its heart could stop instantly. They had to do this while it was still standing. The elephant shifted its weight, letting out a low, painful groan, as if aware of what they were about to do. Its eyes, still dark and glassy, flicked to Ava. It didn't trust them, and maybe, after everything it had suffered, it shouldn't. Ravi and another rescuer, Mika, approached cautiously with long-handled scrapers and antiseptic sprays. The barnacle-like growths had to come off first, but removing them was brutal. Ava steadied herself, then nodded. "Do it!" Ravi pressed the scraper against the first hardened mass and pushed. A sickening crack split the air. The barnacle ripped away, peeling off layers of dead, infected flesh beneath it. A putrid, honey-colored pus oozed from the wound, the exposed tissue raw and seeping. The elephant shuddered violently, its trunk curling inward, but it didn't fight back. The sight made Ava's stomach churn. This wasn't just a parasite infestation, this was a slow, living death. "Dear God," Mika whispered. Ravi didn't stop. One by one, they pried the barnacles off, each revealing more of the grotesque damage beneath. Some wounds were so deep that the bone was visible. Ava knelt by the elephant's massive front leg, pulling out a scalpel to cut away the worst of the infected flesh. The elephant flinched but remained still, its breath coming in ragged gasps. It was letting them do this. For 3 agonizing hours, they worked beneath the oppressive heat of the jungle, sweat mixed with blood and antiseptic, soaking their clothes as they scraped, cleaned, and disinfected. The jungle was eerily silent. Even the animals were watching. Then the elephant's legs trembled. Ava barely had time to react. "It's going down!" Ravi shouted. The elephant let out a deep, heart-wrenching groan, its colossal body swaying before its knees buckled. The ground shook. Ava threw herself backward as the massive beast collapsed, kicking up a cloud of dirt and leaves. For a long moment, no one moved. Ava's heart pounded. "Did we kill it?" Mika asked breathlessly. Yet Ava pressed her fingers against the elephant's thick, leathery side. For a second, all she could hear was the wind rushing through the trees. Then, a heartbeat. Slow. Weak, but there. She exhaled in relief. Number, but it's close. With the elephant down, the team moved faster, dressing the wounds, applying thick medicinal salves, and inserting an IV drip of fluids and antibiotics. Ravi, kneeling beside the elephant's massive head, whispered something under his breath. Ava glanced at him. "What did you say?" His gaze was still on the elephant. A prayer. Ava wasn't superstitious, but something about this felt bigger than science. They were fighting against the jungle itself, and the jungle wasn't always kind, the breaking point. As night fell, the storm they had feared finally arrived. The sky split open with thunder. Rain came down in sheets, soaking their makeshift camp in an instant. The IV drip nearly toppled over, and Mika rushed to shield the medical supplies. "We need shelter." Ava didn't care about the rain. Her eyes were on the elephant. Its breaths were slowing, its massive ribcage barely rising. If they didn't get it back on its feet soon, it would never stand again. Ava grabbed a bucket and filled it with rainwater, splashing it against the elephant's head. "Wake up, big guy." No response. Her pulse spiked. "Come on, don't do this." The elephant's trunk twitched, but its eyes remained closed. The storm raged around them, the rain now muddying the wounds they had fought to clean. Ravi stood, his expression grim. If it doesn't get up soon, it never will. Ava knew, and they had one last chance to save it. She grabbed a flare from the supply bag, then turned to the team. "We're gonna make this elephant fight!" She struck the flare, and firelight burst through the darkness. The white elephant had one last decision to make. Would it rise again, or would the jungle take it forever? The answer would change everything. The flare's red glow cast eerie shadows across the drenched jungle. The rain sizzled against the burning phosphor, sending up wisps of smoke that curled like ghostly fingers into the night. Ava held the flare high, its harsh light dancing across the elephant's soaked, mud-caked body. "Come on, big guy," she murmured. "You're not done yet." The elephant lay still, its ribs barely shifting with each breath. Its massive frame, once powerful, now looked frighteningly fragile. The storm hammered down, washing blood, pus, and antiseptic from its wounds into the mud. The rescue team stood frozen, waiting for a sign. Mika, gripping a tarp to shield their medical gear, shook her head. "Ava, it's too weak." "No," Ava snapped, stepping closer. "I don't accept that." She tossed the flare onto the ground near the elephant's massive head, letting the fire lick at the wet earth, its unnatural glow flickering in the darkness. Fear was a powerful motivator. The elephant twitched. A small, almost imperceptible shudder ran down its flank. Then, a low, deep rumble sounded from its chest. The kind of sound that came before a fight. Ava's breath hitched. "That's it," she whispered. "Come back to us." The elephant's eyes cracked open, black as night, unreadable, but alive. And then, it moved. The massive beast exhaled sharply, its trunk curling, its limbs trembling as it fought against the weight of its own failing body. Ava and Ravi jumped back as the elephant jerked forward, struggling to get its front legs beneath it. The mud sucked at its feet, holding it down like a grave that refused to let go. "Come on," Ravi whispered. "Don't let it win." The elephant heaved again, its muscles flexing, its wounds stretching open, blood mixing with rain and sweat. It roared, a deep guttural sound that sent birds screeching from the trees. And then it stood. For a moment, everything stopped. The wind, the rain, the whispers of doubt. The white elephant towered above them once more, a ghost pulled from the brink of death. Ava felt her heart slam against her ribs. She barely noticed that she was soaking wet, that her legs were shaking, that her fingers were still clenched into fists. The jungle had tried to claim it, but the elephant had fought back, and won. The relief that washed over the team was swift and overwhelming. Mika laughed breathlessly, wiping rain from her face. Ravi just stood in awe, his hands on his knees, staring up at the towering creature they had almost lost. Ava reached out slowly, her fingers brushing the elephant's muddy, scarred skin. "You're not going anywhere, big guy," she whispered. "Not today." The elephant blinked down at her, its dark eyes no longer empty, no longer clouded with pain. It understood. They had given it back its life, and now it was ready to take it back. With a final huff, the elephant turned toward the jungle, moving with slow, deliberate power, stepping past the flare still burning on the ground. "Let's get out of here," Ravi murmured, watching the elephant disappear into the night. Ava didn't move yet. She stood there, watching until the great white shape melted into the shadows of the jungle. Free. In the days that followed, the rescue team stayed in the region, tracking the elephant from a distance, making sure it was truly healing. And it was. It found its herd again. It walked without staggering, and weeks later, it was seen leading a group of elephants to a safer grazing ground, away from parasite-infested waters. It had survived and thrived, but something had changed in Ava. As she stood at the edge of the jungle, watching the place where the elephant had vanished, she realized something. They hadn't just saved the elephant had saved them too. It had fought to live, and in doing so, it had reminded them why they fought too. For every creature that refused to be forgotten, for every soul the jungle tried to take, for every second chance worth fighting for. And as Ava turned away from the jungle, she knew this wouldn't be the last time she fought for one.